shadows lurking, whispers in the hall, stories of the past, spirits rise and fall, feel the cold around you as the fear creeps in. Welcome to the spectral place, where the haunted live, here among the ghostly.
Welcome to another edition of the Paranormal News Hour. I'm your host, Tom Spitalere. My co-host is out tonight, Bill. You've seen Bill here, but he'll be back next month. We're right in the middle of a very busy season, so I want to welcome everybody tonight, whether you're watching at home or overseas or wherever. Welcome. It's almost Halloween. I can't believe Halloween is right around the corner. So what are we going to do for Halloween this year? Well, we got a lot of things planned. The Essex County Ghost Project just came off a very successful September, and we're heading into a record-breaking October with over 25 events planned. So keep an eye out on that on our Facebook page. Our website will be up and running soon. So we're looking forward to this, including ending the season with a very huge live show that will be broadcasted here at the Haunted James R. Ross Memorial Studios and through HC Media in Haverhill and through Bill Ricker Public Access TV. So we've got big plans planned for Halloween. We can't wait. Some of the stuff coming up, we'll be back at Haunted Hilldale Cemetery this weekend coming up. We're going to be at the Haunted Sandown Meeting House and train station. And we still got the podcast show going, so make sure you tune into that on Spreaker or Lawrence Community Access TV. Actually, check out our YouTube page at Lawrence Community Access TV. Like and subscribe that, and like and subscribe to the show if you want to see it there too. We have it airing there. So we have it all over the place to share. Everything's going great. We're looking forward to a record-breaking year this year, over close to 140 plus events this year. Got a big event coming up with the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. So I want to thank them. We got other big events coming up, and I can't wait. So we're going to start off with what's going on for Halloween. Wow, Halloween. It's already almost here. Less commonly known as Halloween or All Hallows Eve or All Saints Eve, a celebration observed in many countries on October 31st, the eve of the Western Christian feast of All Saints' Day. It begins with an observance on All Hallowtide and the time in the liturgical year dedicated to remembering the dead, including the saints, the hallows, the martyrs, and all the faithfully departed. One theory holds that many Halloween traditions were influenced by Celtic harvest festivals, particularly the Gaelic festival of the Samhain, which is believed to have pagan roots. Some go further and suggest the Samhain may have been Christianized as All Hallows Day, along with the Eve by early church. Other academics believe Halloween began solely as a Christian holiday, being a vigil for All Hallows Day. Celebrated in Ireland and Scotland for centuries, the Irish and Scottish immigrants took many Halloween customs to North America in the 19th century. Even though American influence varies, the Halloween customs spread to other countries in the late 20th and 21st century. Popular Halloween activities, including my favorite, was trick-or-treating. It's one of my favorites. And then the Halloween costume parties, pumpkin carving, or turnip carving into jack-o'-lanterns, lighting bonfires, apple bobbing, divination games, playing pranks, visiting haunted attractions, and telling scary stories, watching horror movies. That's not my favorite thing to do. You'll never catch me watching a horror movie. I'll be long gone if you catch me watching a horror movie. So that would be one I'm not going to catch up with. But divination, haunted attractions, going to haunted locations like the Hilldale Cemetery, like the all the other haunted locations that we go to, Hilldale, the Sandown Meeting House, Sandown Train Station. Those are going to be exciting. Telling scary stories, like I said, that's pretty cool too. And then the Christian observance on All Halloween, including attending church services, the lighting of candles on graves of the dead, although secular celebrations for others, and some Christian historically abstained from meat on All Hallows Eve, a tradition reflected in eating certain vegan foods on this vigil day, including apples, potatoes, pancakes, and soul cakes. Well, I think with the pancakes, though, we got to add something. We got a little American cheese to the mix. The word Halloween or Halloween, saints, evening, Christian origins, a term equivalent to All Hallows Eve, attested in the Old English. The word hallow comes from the Scottish form of All Hallows Eve, evening before All Hallows Day, and even the Scots term for eve or evening, and contracted to een or een, E-E-N. All Hallows, then later became All Hallow Eveen, became Halloween. So, like I said, this is there's many ways of celebrating Halloween, and we're going to get into some of them, those traditions. And then by the end of the show, we'll be talking about haunted attractions here in the Merrimack Valley and beyond. Halloween is thought to have influenced Christian beliefs and practices. The English word Halloween came from All Hallows Eve, being the evening before the Christian holy day of All Hallows Day or All Saints Day, which is November 1st, and All Souls Day on November 2nd. Since the time of the early church, major feasts in Christianity such as Christmas, Easter, and Pentecost had vigils that began the night before, as did the feast on All Hallows. These 3 days are collectively called All Hallowtide and are a time in Western Christian honor all saints and pray for recently departed souls who have yet to reach heaven. Commemorations for these saints and martyrs are held by several churches on various dates, mostly in the springtime. In the 4th century Rome, it was held on the 13th of May, and on the 13th of May, 609, Pope Boniface IV rededicated the Pantheon in Rome to St. Mary and all the martyrs. This is the date of the Libera, an ancient Roman festival of the dead. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III, 731 to 741, founded oratory of St. Peter's for relics of the Holy Apostle and all saints and martyrs and confessors. Some sources say it was dedicated on November 1st, while others say it was Palm Sunday, April 1732. By the 800s, there was evidence that the churches in Ireland and Northumbria were holding the feast commemorating the saints on November 1st. Alcuin of Northumbria, a member of the Charlemagne court, may have then introduced this date on the 1st of November, the date of the Frankish Empire. In 835, it became an official date in the Frankish Empire. Some suggest this was due to the Celtic influence, while others suggested it was a Germanic idea, although it is claimed to have both Germanic or Celtic-speaking peoples commemorated the dead and the beginning of winter. They may have seen it as the most fitting time to do so. As time of the dying in nature, it also suggested the change was made on practical grounds that the Roman summer could not accommodate a great number of pilgrims who flocked to it, and perhaps public health concerns over Roman fever, which claimed a number of lives during the Roman sultry summers. By the end of the 12th century, celebration became known as Holy Days of Obligation in the Western Christianity Church. Involved such traditions as ringing church bells for the souls, ding, 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 the souls in purgatory, and it was also customary for criers dressed in black to parade the streets, ringing the bell for mournful sounds, calling all good Christians to remember their poor souls. The All Hallowtide costume of baking and sharing soul cakes for all Christian souls has been suggested in the origins of trick-or-treating. Customs date back to at least the 15th century and was found to be part of England and Wales, Flanders, Bavaria, and Austria. Groups of poor people, often children, would go door to door during All Hallowtide collecting soul cakes in exchange for praying for the dead, especially the souls of the givers, friends, and relatives. This was called souling. Soul cakes were also offered for the souls of themselves to eat, or the soulless that would act as for their representatives. As with Lenten traditions, the Holy Cross Bud soul cakes were often marked with a cross, indicating that they were baked in as alms. Shakespeare mentioned souling comedy in Two Gentlemen and Verona in 1593, while souling Christians would carry lanterns made hollowed out turnips, which could have originally represented the souls of the dead. Jack-o'-lanterns were used to ward off evil spirits on All Saints or All Souls Day during the 19th century. Candles were lit in the homes of Ireland. Flanders, Bavaria, and Tyrol were all called soul lights that served to guide the souls back to visit their earthly homes. And many of these places, candles were also lit at graves on All Souls Day. In Brittany, libations of milk were poured on graves of kinfolk, or food would be left overnight on the dinner table for returning souls, a custom also found in Tyrol and other parts of Italy. Christian ministers print sorry contact linked to wearing costumes as a belief in vengeful ghosts. It was traditionally believed that the souls of the departed wandered the earth until All Saints' Day, All Hallows' Eve, provided a last chance for the dead to gain vengeance on their enemies before moving into the next world. In order to avoid being recognized by any soul they might be seeking such vengeance, people would don masks and costumes. In the Middle Age, churches in Europe were also too poor to display relics of martyred saints. At All Hallowtide, let parishioners dress up as saints instead. Some Christians observe this custom at Halloween today. So this could also have been a Christianization of early pagan customs. Many Christians in the mainland Europe, especially France, believed that one year on Halloween, the dead of our churchyards rose for one wild, hideous carnival known as the Dance Macabre, which is often depicted as church decoration. And then, so there was also belief in medieval history, Dance the Macabre urged Christians not to forget the end of earthly things. That was actually written by two people depicted in that. The Dance Macabre was sometimes enacted in the European villages, pageants, court masks with people dressing up as corpses in various strata of society. This may have been the origin of Halloween costume parties. In Britain, these costumes came under attack. I can't believe that. During the Reformation, as Protestants berated purgatory as a populist doctrine incapable with the Calvinist doctrine of predestination, state-sanctioned ceremonies associated with the intercession of saints, prayers, and souls of purgatory was abolished during the Elizabethan Reform, and All Hallows Day remained an English literal calendar to commemorate the saints as godly human beings. For some nonconformist Protestants, the theology of All Hallows Eve was redefined as souls that cannot be journey from purgatory on their way to heaven. As Catholics frequently believe, the assert instead so-called ghosts are thought to be actually evil spirits. Other Protestants believe in the intermediate state known as Hades, the bosom of Abraham. In some localities, Catholics and Protestants continue souling the candlelight procession and ringing the church bells for the dead. The Anglican Church eventually supposed this bell ringing. This guy, Mark Donnelly, a medieval professor, an archaeologist, historian Daniel Dell wrote, barns and homes were blessed to protect people from livestock from the effect of witches that were believed to accompany the malignant spirits as they traveled the earth. After 1605, Hallowtide was eclipsed in England by Guy Fawkes Night on November 5th, which appropriated some of its customs. In England, ending of the official ceremony related to the intercession of the saints led to the development of the new and unofficial Hallowtide customs. In 19th century rural Lancashire, Catholic families gathered on the hills the night of All Hallows Eve. One held a bunch of burning straws on a pitchfork, while the rest knelt around him, praying for the souls of relatives and friends until the flames went out. This was known as Teenley. There was best knelt around praying for the souls of relatives until the flames went out. This was known as Teenley. There were similar customs in Hertfordshire of the lighting of the Tyndall fires in Derbyshire. Some suggest that these Tyndalls were originally lit to guide the poor souls back to earth. In Scotland and Ireland, the All Hallowtide customs that were odds were reformed teaching and were not suppressed, as they were important life cycle and the rites of passage. The local communities curbing them would have been difficult. In parts of Italy in the 15th century, families left meal out for ghosts and relatives before leaving church services. In the 19th century, Italy churches staged a theatrical reenactment of scenes from lives of the saints on All Hallows Day, with participants representing the realistic wax figures. In 1823, the graveyard of the Holy Spirit Hospital in Rome presented a scene in which the bodies of those who recently died were arrayed around in a wax statue of an angel who pointed upward towards heaven. In the same country, parish priests went house to house asking for small gifts of food, which they shared among themselves throughout the night. In Spain, they continued to bake special pastries called the bones of the holy. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Or Jus de Santo, and set on the graves at cemeteries, Spain, France, as well as Latin America. Priests led the Christian processions during the Hallowtide. And then drew beggars to appeal their tender thing. I just noticing we are also live, so we actually have a question. Have you ever visited Purgatory Falls in Lunenburg, New Hampshire? No, I haven't yet. It's something on my checklist to do. Hey, Mike Stevens, how we doing? So, what's next? So we got the Christian belief done. Now there's a Gaelic folk of influence on Halloween. Today's Halloween customs are thought to have been influenced by folk customs and beliefs of the Celtic-speaking countries, some in which are believed to have pagan roots. A folk lyrist by the name of Jack Santino writes, there was thought Ireland was uneasy truce existing between customs and beliefs associated with Christianity and those associated with religious that were Irish before Christianity arrived. The origin of Halloween customs are typically linked to the Gaelic festival of the Samhain. I always pronounce that wrong, Samhain. And 1/4 days of the medieval Gaelic calendar, or Celtic Gaelic calendar, has been celebrated on the 31st October, November 1st in Ireland, Scotland, the Isle of Man. The Kindred festival has been held in the Brittonic Celts called Caelan Golf in Wales, Caelan Quov in Cornwall, Caelan Ganov, and in Brittany, a name meaning the first day of winter. For the Celts, the day ended and began in sunset. This was a festival that begins the evening before November 1st by modern reckoning. Samhain is mentioned in some of the earliest Irish literatures, and the names have been used by historians who refer as Celtic Halloween costumes until the 19th century, and are still the Gaelic and Welsh names for Halloween. Samhain marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, or the darker half of the year. It was seen as a liminal time, and when the boundaries between the world and the other worlds thinned. This meant the Aesoci, the spirits or fairies, could more easily come into this world and were particularly active. Most scholars see them as degraded versions of the ancient gods whose power remained active in the people's minds even after they had been officially replaced by later religious beliefs. They were both respected and feared, with individuals often invoking the protection of God when approaching their dwellings. At Samhain, the Anno Saint was appeased to ensure the people and their livestock survived the winter, offering them food and drink, or portions of the crop were left outside for them. The souls of the dead were also said to revisit their homes seeking hospitality. Places were set on the dinner table and by the fire to welcome them. The belief that souls of the dead return home one night of the year must be appeased, it seems, to the ancient origins as it found many cultures. The 19th century Ireland candles would be lit and prayers formally offered to the souls of the dead after eating and drinking games would begin. So this is a real interesting religious and fun time for on Halloween. Throughout Ireland and Britain, especially in the Celtic-speaking regions, household festivities included divination rituals, games that include foretell one's future, especially regarding death and marriage. Apples and nuts were used, and customs including apple bobbing, which is not my favorite things. They've done that at plenty of New England festivals. Nut roasting, scrying on the mirror or gazing, pouring molten lead or egg whites into the water, dream interpretation, and others. Special bonfires were lit with rituals involving them. Their flames of smoke and ashes were deemed to have protective and cleansing powers. In some places, torches lit from the bonfire were carried sunwise around homes and fields to protect them. It is suggested that the fires were kind of a imitative or sympathetic magic. They mimicked the sun and held back the decay of darkness in the wintertime. They were also used as divination to ward off evil spirits in Scotland. These bonfires and divination games were banned by the church elders in some parishes. In Wales, the bonfires would also lit to prevent the souls of the dead falling back to earth. Later, these bonfires were used to keep away the devil. All right, from the 16th century, festivals including mummying, disguising in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isles of Man and Wales were involved in going house to house in a costume or disguise, usually reciting verses of songs in exchange for food. It may have originally been a tradition whereby people impersonated Amos Dahl and the souls of the dead and received offerings on their behalf, similar to souling. Impersonating these beings or wearing a disguise was also believed to protect oneself from them. In parts of Southern Ireland, the guises included hobby horses. The man dressed as a Lair, L-A-I-R, a Lair behind, a white mare, led youths into the house, to house, reciting verses, some which had pagan overtones. In exchange for food, they also donated food and could expect a good fortune of Macola. Not doing so would bring misfortune. In Scotland, youths went to the house with the mask painted and blackened faces, often threatening the mischief if they were not welcome. This was another way of protecting their cultures and their beliefs. Blackened faces threatening mischief if they're not welcome. Ancient festivals including people in costume representing the spirits and the faces marked or blackened with the ashes of the sacred bonfire. In parts of Wales, men were about dressed as a fearsome being called Gawachod. Okay. In the late 19th century, early 20th century, young people in Glamington and Auchinleck cross-dressed. Elsewhere in Europe, mummying was part of the other festivals. Like Celtic-speaking religions, it was particularly appropriate at night upon the supernatural being was said to be abroad and could be imitated or warded off by human wanderers. From at least the 18th century, imitating malignant spirits led playing pranks in Ireland and the Scottish Highlands. Wearing costumes, playing pranks at Halloween did not spread to England until the 20th century. Pranksters used hollowed-out turnips, mango wurzels as lanterns, and often carved grotesque faces. By those who made them, the lanterns were variously said to represent the spirits or used to ward off evil spirits. They were common in parts of Ireland and the Scottish Highlands in the 19th century, as well as Somerset or in the 20th century and other parts of Britain. Then finally, we got our independence. It came to America. So we're not going to bore everybody reading, but we came to America, and it came in the colonists in Maryland, recognized All Hallows Eve at their church calendars. Although Puritans in New England strongly opposed the holiday, along with other traditional celebrations of established church, including Christmas, almanacs in the late 18th and early 19th century gave no indication of Halloween was widely celebrated in North America. It was not until a mass of Irish and Scottish immigrants in the 19th century that Halloween became a major holiday in America. Most American Halloween traditions were inherited from the Irish and the Scots. Though in Cajun areas it was nocturnal, a nocturnal mass was said in cemeteries on Halloween night. Candles have been blessed were placed on graves, and families would sometimes spend the entire night at the graveside. Originally confirmed, these immigrant communities as gradually assimilated into mainstream society and celebrated coast to coast by people of all social, racial, and religious backgrounds in the early 20th century. And let me tell you, they know how to celebrate it. Not too far from Haunted Lawrence's, the second most haunted city in Massachusetts, and that's Salem, Massachusetts. Believe it or not, Lowell's number one. And they did a good job putting Halloween together to celebrate. There's over 1 million people that go to Salem the whole month of October. So that's always fun. So, trick-or-treating. Customary for children on Halloween. They dress up, they go out trick-or-treating. And the practice said to have roots back in medieval practice of mummying, which is closely related to souling. John Pyman wrote that many of the feast days associated with the presentation of mummying plays a celebrated role in the Christian church. These feasts also include All Hallows Eve, Christmas 12th night, the Shrove of Tuesday, and mummy practicing in mummy practiced in Germany, Scandinavia, and other parts of Europe. Involved masked persons, fancy dress, or paraded the streets and entered houses to dance and play dice in silence. In England, from medieval period until the 1930s, people practiced Christian customs of souling Halloween, which moved groups of soulers to both Protestant and Catholics, going from parish to parish, bringing their rich soul with them, and givers of their friends. In the Philippines, practice souling is called Pangalulawa, I believe. Pangaluluwa. Was practiced all over the place. People dressed themselves up with white clothes to represent the souls visiting houses, and people, they sing in return their prayers in sweet. In Scotland and Ireland, guising children, disguising them in costume from door to door for food and coins, is traditional Halloween costumes. It is recorded that Scotland in 1895 were masqueraders disguised carrying lanterns made out of scooped turnips, visiting homes and rewarded with cakes, fruits, and money. The Irish, the most people thought were in Ireland, the most popular phrase for the children to shout until the 2000s was "Help the Halloween party." The practice of guising Halloween in North America was first recorded in 1911 when a newspaper in Kingston, Ontario, Canada reported a children going and picking that up. So it's real interesting what's going on here. So you have these cultures and customs coming over here, and they're affecting our puritanical New England culture. I mean, which, if you really look at it, we talk about Salem. What are the witches of Salem? I hate to break this news, everybody. The witches of Salem don't exist. There were some in Salem. Most of them were in Danvers and North Andover, and there was one convicted out of Methuen. Tenney was her last name. So that doesn't mean they were all there. It just means Salem took advantage of that situation. Salem was a sailing community, a frontier community. They had a lot of things going good for it. But whenever this witch thing happened, they convinced their fathers that they were possessed. They convinced the courts, and a lot of people were hung for that. Very sad time in our New England history. Very sad time. Here's a tradition we don't do anymore. At Christmas, we send out tons of cards. But they used to send out, in the 20th century, they started Halloween postcards were produced at the turn of the 20th century, 1920s, commonly show children, but not trick-or-treating. Trick-or-treating does not seem to have become a widespread practice in North America until the 1930s, with the first U.S. appearance of the term in 1934 and the first used by the National publication occurring in 1939. Popular variant of trick-or-treating known as trunk-or-treating or Halloween tailgating occurs when children are offered treats from trunks of cars parked at church parking lots or sometimes a school lot. The trunk-or-treat event is the trunk or boot that's automobile that's filled with certain themed movies, literature, sculpture, and jewels. Trunk-or-treating is known popularity due to its inception. Due to the perception as being more safe than going door to door, as the point resonated with parents, as well as the fact to solve rural condominium in which the parents are built a half a mile apart. Halloween traditionally molded into figures as vampires, ghosts, skeletons, scary-looking witches, devils. Over time, costume suggestion included a popular trend, and every major toy company and company out there was producing pajamas and other dress wear. So that's a little bit about Halloween and some of the, major things. We're going to get back to that because this show is really sailing along. I want to get through a few things first. So that's a little bit about Halloween. If we have time at the end, we will continue on. But I want to talk about some of the haunted locations here in Merrimack Valley. Let's start with the Brick and Ash. 10 Center Street, Newburyport. Bartender feels presence, waitresses feel things. They've never been able to investigate it, but people have heard footsteps. I've heard from people who've gone there to eat and people who've gone there who are paranormal investigators. They won't let investigate, which is understand. So that's where all that information came from. 114, Panera Bread. A bunch of people told me they've seen children out in the parking lot and had keys moved in cars and lights played with while they're inside Panera Bread eating. So that's interesting. But what could be causing that? This could be the answer. Route 114, Bertucci's. Barely holding on right next door is obviously Panera. Right next door is obviously, Panera Bread. I was right. So back in the room, there's in the back of the restaurant, which is Bertucci's now, there's a strong familiar presence, a female spirit in the back of that room. We don't know who it is, but it is believed to be the former owner. Could be in that room. Natural presence and feeling. Yeah, when I sat there, I could actually feel something was not right about that place at all. Studio 2 near exit 59. Offices upstairs, doors locked down outside. Books have flown off the shelves in the storage room, and dark figures are seen in the windows. So that's Studio 2 near exit 59. So that's interesting. Princeton Place at Chelmsford. Pictures move off the wall. Female spirit that shows herself to the staff, and cries of children plunging their own shift. Playing overnight. Sorry, not plunging, playing overnight. The Coach Stop up in Londonderry. That was a restaurant I went to years ago. And shadow figures, children of adults. Energy is present in the restaurant. And even the waitress told us she gets scared going downstairs. Downtown Historic Haunted Haverhill. Casablanca, which is it's now Casablanca. Before that was Coaches and the Whittier Hotel. 1 to 7 Washington Square. Keys get moved. Shadow figures mostly seen over the basement. Coaches, waitress, friend, and so when it was Coaches, Essex County went in there and did a full investigation. And you go to get in the basement in the restaurant. We had seen a figure in one of the rooms there, and in the basement the energy was quite thick. So that's something to really look forward to if you're looking forward to doing some great paranormal investigations. There's so many places to visit, I actually have to pull out my notes. I can't leave out the graveyards. Pentucket Graveyard in Haverhill has some great activity, including the Judge Saltonstall. I've channeled in there many of times, and you can reach Judge Saltonstall, not Judge Saltonstall, sorry. Judge Saltonstall is buried down in Newburyport, down in this Newburyport area. So at Pentucket Graveyard, the judge from the Salem Witchester area, and I just drew a blank on his name, is buried there right up front, and it's very interesting. Saltonstall, Nathaniel Saltonstall. It's very interesting what happens near his grave. The old burying ground, that's in Newburyport. No, we had the pendulum going nuts the day we went there and did a Tom Live show. We've also gotten some interesting fields and everything else. So that's Old Bradford Burial Ground, 16th. Yeah, Old Bradford, not Newburyport. That one there, I actually led the cleanup on, and we used the pendulum to locate a couple of the graves. The energy in that place is not as crazy as Pentucket. West Parish Burial Ground off of Route 97. Voices. We did get stuff on the S-Box when we were there doing the Tom Live show. It is real interesting there. St. James Cemetery, 1852. That is right behind Hilldale Cemetery. Between the so you got Hilldale, the train tracks that go from Boston to Maine, and then St. James Cemetery. And those cemeteries, you should always get permission to go in. Some of them don't allow them. St. James does not. I had the night we went in there for a special reason, with permission. Walnut Grove on Canosa Street. We got a great picture of Lydia Eyre, which I don't have with me. We also got some great pendulum work and some possible EVPs. Greenwood Cemetery on Broadway. People have seen the Countess for years crossing the road. Countess Mary Duvois, who actually married a French count but ended up staying in America while he took off and went back to his wife. But her spirit is seen roaming East Broadway. Children of Israel, 1893, on Middle Road. That cemetery, we had a couple team members channel in there. We've had calls about weird, mysterious creatures. Out back, we did a Tom Live show going back there, and it became really interesting, heavily interesting over there. We felt like spider webs were falling down on our heads. Then, of course, you got Hilldale Cemetery, which we run the paranormal investigations out of. And then some of the other stuff that's in Ghosts and Legends of the Merrimack Valley. You have Winnikinny Castle at Lake Pickerel, Canosa Lake. Was Pennacook likely inhabited that area. There are people seen walking the trails. Dogs sometimes act strange. Many years ago, for the Christmas fund for the Haverhill Gazette, we actually brought somebody in. We did an event at Winnikinny, and while we were downstairs doing a table tipping demonstration, you saw shadow figures walking the catwalk. That was real interesting. So that's something to look at. And of course, there's been shadow figures seen during the day as you walk the trails and many other things. The next thing I'm going to talk about is my old college, Bradford College. I don't think a week went by where nothing didn't happen over there. So one night I'm staying with some friends in the co-ed dorms. And it was a rainy, snowy, lousy night. They didn't want me driving back. And, it was just a bad night. I stayed there quite a bit when I was in college. And I got up to use the restroom. So it's co-ed, but there's locked doors all over the place inside those co-ed bathrooms. It's not like you see on TV. So I was walking down the hallway, and this lady came out of nowhere in a Victorian robe. But that wasn't odd for me because it was a liberal arts college, so you had people dressing a lot of different ways. I saw every type of hair color, every type of dress you could think of. So having a Victorian garb walking the hallways at night, not to me at all. So, and the lights were out, and she had a lantern, a regular lantern. I didn't even pay much attention to it. Walking down the hallway, we didn't say anything. It was like 2 doors down. It wasn't that far. Walked into the bathroom, went to say thank you, and they went. Nobody was there. Many a nights, I'm yes, I may run a paranormal investigation team. I may be the board president running the day-to-day operations of Lawrence Community Access TV right now. But don't ask me much about computers and technology because I'm not good at that stuff. I'm learning. I've learned a lot. But back in the day, I was one of the first classes to start really using not typewriters, computers. So we had an old Apple IIe at home, and I had to type out all my paperwork. So I used to long write everything and then go to the library and spend till 3 in the morning because I was one of these. Hunt and peck, 6, 7 pages. Many a times in the tunnels that connected the main building, Academy Hall, the tunnels that connected, I'd be down in Tupelo, not Tupelo, yeah, sure, Tom. I'd be down, Denworth, Hazeltine Hall, where the computers were, and you could actually hear things in the tunnels. It was quite cool. But those tunnels were actually built to keep the women private from the public view when they were moving back and forth and safe at night because you couldn't access those from the road. Denworth Hall, which is falling down right now. Supposedly the school that's there is going to be tearing it down. They reported ghost stories of almost an identical to, and I'll get back to let me just get back to Academy Hall. A girl supposedly committed suicide upstairs in reaction to a problem she had with the priest that was running the school at the time in the 1800s. But this was also similarly seen in Denworth Hall, a theater. She was killed when she was pregnant, and some variation of the sordid ending. The student is generally mischief, playing pranks on people in the theater. She does not like to be talked about, and she has been heard singing Hush Little Baby up the stairs in part of the building. I do remember going to plays over there and feeling kind of odd, and I've been all over because that's where freshman year they urged you to take 5 classes before educational and one like a gym of sorts or some type of light so you could get adjusted to the college life. I took something I thought would help me out down the road. It really hasn't much, but I took Tai Chi, which was in Denworth Hall, and had Professor Mark Mannheimer, who's listening right now. And you could hear things, because I'd always get to class early, and I'd be sitting there waiting for them, and you could actually hear things going on while we were trying to learn Tai Chi. That's a very interesting place. So I have been lucky enough. The Greenleaf House, which was owned by the college, is now privately owned, was a foreign exchange through possibly checked into a dormer. While alone in the building, he left his room and upon returning saw a bloody footprint outside his door in his room. He found an old woman covered with blood. Variations of this story place the woman in the bathroom or reflection in the mirror only. She's young and in a black dress or white gown covered in blood. So that's interesting. That was in the Greenleaf house. But, I mean, wherever I've gone in life, I've been lucky or unlucky. Oh, one more thing about Bradford College before I get on to ghost in the material, ghost in anything. There was this place called Kimball Tavern, owned by Bradford College at the time. I actually did my historical thesis on this building. There was lights seen when there shouldn't be any lights. Someone took a photograph in the building, another paranormal team. In fact, she's not on tonight. But so that was interesting. But what I want to get back into real quick here, I've been lucky enough to be around haunted places most of my life. Methuen High School was also haunted. Hi, Regina. You probably heard this story. A friend of mine from high school was on. Regina, hi. In the ice skating rink is a former student who passed away in there unceremoniously. It was believed to be suicide. But his spirit still roams in the ice rink when I was at Methuen High School, and that was almost 30 years ago. I've talked to some of the retired guys who have since retired who can talk to me, and supposedly the spirit still roams the ice skating rink at night. So that's interesting. Another interesting home. We always think of ministers as very holy people. They are. They're very holy. When was this? It was back in the late 70s, early 80s. I forgot the exact date, Regina, but it was around that time. And ever since then, people have seen the ghost. On a very busy Boston road in Haverhill, which is 125, there's a colonial era house at 1226 Main Street. It's in a published book called True Tales of Ghosts and Hauntings. I took this in, called the Moses Day Homestead. Moses Day is buried at the old Bradford burial ground, and he was the minister of the White Church. His spirit has been seen in the house and everywhere around the area, moving things in the house and enjoying, his time making mischief and other things for other people. So that's always interesting. In Methuen, we have the haunted Tenney Gatehouse, which we've talked about hundreds of times. There's no events going on as of right now, but you never know. So that's an interesting place. Years ago, the team I was with, the gentleman went into the restroom, used the bathroom, and looked in the mirror and saw Mr. Tenney looking at him. Neighbors have told me they've seen Mr. Tenney walking the building. So, because I live in Methuen and people come up to me all the time. Another great movie was 21 Grams, The Weight Loss of the Body. This is a great historical thing. So Dr. Duncan McDougall from Haverhill, the old hospital was located up near where the Methodist Church is now. He wanted to weigh the soul. So he said, when you die, you lose weight. Well, we do lose weight. If you've been around people who have died, natural gases leave, water leaves, so you're going to lose weight. I mean, it just happens. But he believed the soul went to heaven. And that's where the movie 21 Grams came up. Dr. Duncan McDougall, it was very controversial. They're not sure if that's actually accurate or not. It's been proved. Some people tried to prove it. Some have tried to disprove it. I'm not here to tell you what I think. I'm just letting you know it's very interesting. In fact, it was so interesting that they did a movie called 21 Grams. And one of his members, so he took poor people who were dying of tuberculosis, and then promised the family he would properly pay for the burial and everything else if they let him keep the guy or the lady till he passes. Then he would pay for the cremation and take care of everything. So that was the deal, but after the done of the weighing, there was no way of proving or disproving it, so a lot of people said no. But what's interesting is Dr. Duncan McDougall died himself of tuberculosis. So it didn't really last long. That's the ghost of Tenny. All right. I have never been to Dudley Road, but according to what I've researched and talked to some of the police officers in Billerica and other locations. In fact, we will be at Billerica Public Access TV doing a fundraiser for them and a ghost hunt. The little historical facts of to substantiate these tales, but regardless, Dudley Road is a regional magnet for strange legends of people in white. UFOs have been sighted over that. People have reported seeing a dark ghostly figure hanging from a tree, an apparent suicide victim body to replay his final moments of eternity life. And the other legend involves the bald people who live in the woods and run, screaming up to your cars and then venturing down the road and then retract backwards and do the same thing. I don't know anybody that's actually seen all of that, but that was in this book, and it's a well-written book, so it's something I trust when reading. Henry C. Nevins of the Home of the Aging. Every time I ever walked in there to go visit my grandmother, many spirits wanted to come out and say hi in there. Many, many, many. So that's some of the great locations. If you're around and you're living in the area, right off of Turtle Mound, it's in Andover, near the pond. And I'm drawing a blank on the pond. Sorry about that. I don't know why I'm doing that. I know this area like the back of my head. But the big pond over there. And Maureen People Channel, there's a big write-up on this. But that area is a stone structure that's very old to begin with. And it was a very interesting night, the night I went. You can actually now, it was privately owned, but I just found out, and I don't have it with me here, the information, but Turtle Mound is now open to the public during the daytime. It's on the walking trails around Lake, not Lake Kachikowick. Lake Kachikowick. Sorry, the one in Andover. So you can go check that out. Another place in Groveland, VZ Park. It's 47.5 acres, mostly glacial drumlin, and of the sand back from the river from the Ice Age. And it's right near Johnson Pond, which is an 80-acre creek, 75 feet away from the river. The natives use this for seasonal fishing, the small college. In the 1950s, the land was purchased by the Little Missionary Sisters of Charity and then sold and made VZ Park in 1996. So when I went out to VZ Park, then did a Tom Live show, we caught a lot of great things going on over there. You could hear things, hear whispers in the wind and everything. That was actually a fun night. So go check out VZ Park. These are all things that you can check out locally, and that's what we're here to do. We want to make Essex County the place to come to. Essex County in southern New Hampshire. We've had UFO sightings right on Washington Street in Methuen. UFO sightings all over the place. It's great. It's interesting. There have been sightings on 114 right here in Lawrence. And then in Methuen, near Holy Family Hospital, took place the Battle of Bloody Brook. And boy, was that a bloody battle. That was between two Native American tribes, and some say you can still see the tribes today. The last thing, well, we've come to an end of another great show. Wow. We cruised this show. This should have been a 2-hour special, but save that for Halloween night. We're going to have at least a 2-hour special live from the James R. Ross Memorial Studios in Haunted Lawrence. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It's been a great night. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the Paranormal. And don't forget to check out our Facebook pages because we got a lot of great events coming up. Good night, everybody.
In shadows lurking, whispers in the hall, stories of the past, spirits rise and